was Marissa Ferre. It's titled He Is, featuring Manalisi on that one. And then straight after that as well, Innovation Worship featuring Brandon Lake, Chris Brown as well. It's titled Praise, taking us to 1619 Central African time.
It's, of course, also time for us to get into another positive conversation. See what I did there? With Andre, the big positive guy, as well as Tina Be Alive. And once again, a very much needed conversation. So I think it's also fitting, in the middle of July, sometimes we have relationships where there's not necessarily a lot of closure. And so you end up burning bridges, as it were. And so this afternoon's conversation is about what it means to reconcile relationships, whether it's family, whether it's platonic, whether it's romantic, whatever the case is. And then Andre has a certain term that he will use to chat to us more about this conversation. Look, why are you laughing, Andre?
You just said that so beautifully.
I didn't even rehearse. No rehearsal.
None of the coarseness of my description.
Hello, Bert. How are you doing?
Very well. How are you guys today?
So good. I love your jersey. It's very bright.
I like the pink and blue. There's a pink and blue color pattern.
Listen,
we sit there and we actually plan this.
We've got sketches and.
Oh man, brand new week. Out of 10, how has it been? As a start off on a good note, would you say?
I met the most wonderful young black woman on the Discovery Bank Help Center this morning.
How was that?
I was trying to change a bank account, and what happens is it's not been going well. And eventually I found her this morning. I said to her, "Are you young?" And she said, "Yes, I'm very young." And I said, "I'm very old. Can you help me with changing my bank account?" I said, "You're going to say everything 3 times and really slowly." And boy, was in Corsi, wherever you are, you were amazing. She sat there. Yes, don't worry, don't panic. I'll do it again for you.
So good customer service.
Oh, she was amazing. Then she had this little red dot. She eventually took over my phone, and she was pointing the little red dot. So she said, "I can only point the dot." And she said, "You see this little button here? Push this button."
You did say you're old.
I did say I was old.
Trying to accommodate you.
But I just can't help it. I mean, am I the only one that gets lost in these new cell phones and bank accounts, and people are aiming their phone at the spa lady, and it looks like they're taking a selfie. But they're paying.
I tell you what, I've just recently found out that I'm classed as a millennial, and even some of this stuff is a little bit beyond me. I have to be honest.
No,
it's just like, can you just make it simple? Let me download the app, and then talk me through it.
Yeah, someone else did it for me actually.
Yeah.
At this point.
I was out of school before Bill Gates was born. He's only just coming now to catch up.
Oh man, it's so lovely to have you both with us.
Thanks.
Tina, I hope your week has started off on a good note as well.
Always.
Fantastic. Now, we are chatting about a much needed conversation, Andre, but I like how you have termed it National Get Out of the Doghouse Day. Chat to us about this.
Well, I was actually going to do something about Bastille Day, and I was trying to find some sort of religious connotations and stuff, but everything is just evil. So if it's just the people are killing all the royal guillotining, I couldn't find anything nice to speak about. So I looked in July the 15th, which it is today, I think, and it said, what day is it? And it said, it is National Get Out of the Doghouse Day. So it's also another expression, and you always love it when I teach you a new word there, Romeo. So doghouse is a very fancy Americanism for a kennel. And so let's just quickly talk about where it comes from. J.M. Barrie, who wrote what book? Peter Pan. You guys are really young.
Yeah,
he wrote Peter Pan.
Schooling us.
And in the book, there was a man who was always in trouble with his wife. And what she did is she used to chase him outside, because in the early 1900s, dogs didn't sleep inside the house. They slept in the kennel. And what happens, he just realized when he was in trouble, he used to just climb in the kennel with the dog and sleep with the dog. And the expression now means to be in trouble with somebody that you like. So you've done something wrong, and now what happens? You're in the doghouse. And then in 1999, a very clever American lady came along with this thing about National Get Out of the Doghouse Day. Now, what company do you think she owned?
Montego.
A flower. She owned a florist. She owned a florist. And what she was saying, if you're in trouble with somebody that you love, buy them a bunch of flowers. And I just thought, and you're absolutely spot on. It's about reconciliation. It's about remaking those friendships that we sometimes have accidentally. We've said something, done something, slipped up, forgotten a birthday, whatever it is. And what can we do to fix those relationships?
And sometimes it's very hard to go back and I suppose be the bigger person, but it is very needed to reconcile and mend.
Is it easy for you to say I'm sorry?
I think now that I'm older, yes,
Mm.
it is easier. But before, I think pride got in the way, and I think humanly, it's human nature to sort of be proud. Is it proud? Be proud, and instead of just owning up and saying, "Look, I'll be the bigger person, and I apologize. It's not worth letting this fester."
I'm assuming Petal listens because she listens to most of our shows. But one of the things that happened, I got married back in the Voortrekker days, 31 years ago, and something happened is that I was very opinionated, very young, very bright, and I always believed that I was right. And that's not a good recipe for a relationship. You can't always be right. One of the things that Glenys did, and she was very good at this, she was always very quick to apologize. And she would often say she was sorry. And then I actually only cottoned on a couple of years later that sometimes she knew she was right, because I'd found out she was right. And then I'd only discovered that she'd said she'd been sorry because she didn't want to have friction. She didn't want there to be trouble. And then, so the first time I did it, and I was like, okay, I'm sorry, sort of very reluctantly and stuff, it actually can heal a lot of wounds. It's a very simple thing to do. But sometimes it's just not worth the aggravation to fight with someone, especially someone that you love. But Tina, you don't have any bad enemies, do you?
I wouldn't say that. But I've learned over the years. I've always been very quick to say I'm sorry, whether I'm sorry or not, often. But it helps smooth over sort of any prickles, if you know what I mean, and it just helps you move forward that little bit quicker. But I think in later years, I've been a little bit more reluctant to say I'm sorry so quickly, because sometimes I think to myself, well, do I really want my relationship with this person to continue? Am I saying sorry to smooth a path where I don't necessarily believe that this person is the right kind of person to add value to my life anymore? I think we have to.
You are so wise. That's exactly the angle that I was going in at. And just saying sometimes you want to repair it. So it's like your dearly beloved. It's the person you love most in their life. It doesn't matter what they've done or what it is. Just say sorry. You don't want to lose that relationship. But here's the technical thing. If someone is just say sort of on the border of your relationships, and they've done something to hurt you, is it always our responsibility to fix it up? Or is it maybe the opportunity to let this one go? You look like you're desperate to say something.
So I've had a recent experience actually on this conversation. So I have had a number of friends in the past, I think, few months where I have drifted from these relationships and friendships, purely because I'm at a season in my life where there's a lot of things that I'm busy with, things that I've prioritized in my life that requires a bit of a shift, meaning now my time is I'm not as accessible as I was before. And so, one friend came out and said, well, you haven't checked up with me in a year, why are you quiet? You only come when you need advice, whatever the case is. And I took a moment to think, is this worth me being the bigger person here? How do I deal with this? Do I apologize for my part in how the relationship is played out? Or do I just, as you say, Tina, maybe disregard, because maybe there's no value for this person in my life? So I think it's so interesting.
I love that word that you use, there's seasons. And sometimes we've got to be able to pick a season and say, that season is now finished. And it's time to move on. And I hate that. I love staying friends with everybody. But there comes a time that you just haven't got any hours left in the day. You can't have everything. And sometimes, in hindsight, I've often looked and found that I was being quite abused. And Glenny is quite good at picking that up as well. She's like, they only come here because we feed them every single day. They only come here because you give them money. They only come here because they get into places they can't get into. And what happens when you realize that, sometimes I still don't care because I still enjoy their company. But sometimes it's like, enough is enough now. And then I think is something. So if anybody's out there who feels that they've got relationships that they're desperately trying to repair, that are possibly irreparable or just don't need to be repaired. So I don't want people to go out there and feel that they have to friend everybody. But I'd like to tell you one personal story. So you've heard me tell the story, and I think once you've had this, you always tell the story. So 3 years ago, I get cancer, and I go there, and they say you got 3 months left to live, and I'm like, oh, I can't bear this. And I think there, and everybody says, we want to come visit, and I was like, no, I don't want anybody to come visit. I just want to see my wife and my mother and my daughter. I don't want to see anybody else. And so I did that, and then I thought to myself, is there anything I desperately have to do? Desperately have to do. So there's always the book that I should have written and would have written and didn't write. But the thing that really bugged me is that there were a few relationships that I potentially had broken myself. And for whatever reason, we were both too proud, or we just never repaired them. And that's the only thing I did in those weeks leading up to all the medication and surgery and whatever, is I tried to repair them, those relationships. It was quite funny because one of my relationships was with a very wealthy, very amazing lawyer. And we'd somehow got misunderstood somewhere, and we hadn't spoken to each other for a couple of years. So I phoned him and I said, have you heard? And he goes, heard about what? And I said, I've been diagnosed with cancer and I'm going to be dead in 3 months' time, and I don't want to die with you being my bad friend. And he cried and I cried, and we got together, we had lunch, and we made up, and it was such a silly misunderstanding. So very often I think is that don't wait until something serious happens or you think you're dying. If you've got a relationship that needs to be friended, and I find this so often in people with families, they don't speak to their brothers or their sisters or whatever. And I think sometimes you've got to say, is it really worthwhile me being an enemy with this person? But I'm sure somebody else is going to phone in any second now and tell us about those people that either hurt them, and is it proper to fix up those relationships?
And just going back on seasons, sometimes people are in your life for a particular season, and then it's, time to move on, and that's okay.
It's hard to accept when you're young, but when you get older, you think, what happened to that person? And they just drifted on quite naturally, and it was good, and they did something good for you, and hopefully you did something good for them, and it's okay.
And you love them from a distance.
I still love them. I still love them from a distance. When I had my 60th birthday, it was wonderful. I invited 60 people to my birthday. It was the middle of COVID, and what I did is I invited 60 people on Zoom. And somebody said, how did you pick these people? And I said, these are people that made an impact on my life. Some of them didn't even know. Some of them I went to school with in primary school days. And I invited them, and they said, what is it? I said, it's my 60th birthday. They said, but I haven't seen you for 50 years. I said, you'll find out when you come to the party. And I was saying, you did this for me, and you changed my life. You made me a different and better person. And out of all the people I've met in my entire life, you're the 60 that made the biggest difference.
That's so nice.
Yeah. I love also how, the word also touches on, as we wrap up this theme and get into some messages as well, how it touches on, do not let the sun set, without you apologizing or being at peace with someone. And I think that also means you can apologize, you can sometimes you have to be the bigger person, even though you didn't do that thing, reach out. And like you said, hey, I only have 3 months. Maybe you don't have to say you have 3 months, depends on the situation. But extend that olive branch, extend that hand. Whether it's taken or not, that's something that's not in your control. But if you've done that and if you're at peace, then you can move on and you can move forward as well. But it takes a certain level of maturity as well. And I think that's why we see so many grudges that we inherit, maybe because my friend doesn't speak to X, Y, and Z. Now,
my grandmother doesn't
or my grandmother. Now all of a sudden I've inherited this. I don't even know where it started. But I have to, because
it's like these old Irish feuds. They go on for centuries, and you weren't even there. And now you're supposed to hate somebody because something that happened. But that's a very wise bit of advice. And often, if we're marrying young couples and things like, and I always just say, I don't care what it is, because tomorrow you will have forgotten anyway. Just say you're sorry.
Right.
Go to bed, make up, and just be friends.
I'm a great letter writer. So especially with people who I value highly in my life, I will land up writing a long letter, and I will admit the wrongs that I have done, and I will also say to them, when you did X, Y, Z, I felt hurt because whatever the case is. And I think that's some of us are so quick to cut the person off because they've hurt us, but do they even know and how they hurt us? And especially when we're young, oh, well, he should know what he's done. Well, no, not necessarily if you don't tell them. And give them an opportunity to say sorry.
And sometimes you hurt people that you don't even know you've done it. And I think that's often the worst. You suddenly see somebody's really cross with you, and you've got no idea what you did. And you maybe made a flippant comment or something like that. And sometimes you might as well just go say, it's sorry, you're sorry. But as I say, don't, as a Christian, feel that you have to say you're sorry. I'm not saying that in a horrible way. Sometimes it's the time for the relationship to end. Move on. Move on. Life is short.
Just on that note, Andre, and this leads up to the last question. We've got a question from a listener, anonymous, saying, "What do you do when your family has written you off?" This ties into the last question, of course, going, "How do I repair these broken relationships, if they even are worth repairing?"
And it's such a difficult one. And recently, I've met so many people that have basically been excommunicated by their families. So the reality is, you can only forgive. You can't tell other people to forgive. And so that's a really, 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 really tough one. And so one of the things the only thing I can suggest is just let them know exactly how you feel. I love Tina's thing there about writing a letter or letting them know how you feel. You can't force them to love you. You can't force anyone to love you. But I think you can be there and knock on the door, continuously knock on the door. And yeah, and I just pray for you, because that's a very tough situation. Family, for all their faults, are still your family. I know everyone says you can pick your own family and your friends are better and stuff. But as you go through life, when times get tough, they're always the ones that are there. And for whatever reason they've kicked you out, if you've done something wrong, you've got to repair it. If you haven't done anything wrong and you feel you're not at fault, I think you can't hold it against them. Just hang in there, pray about it, and see what happens. I think the only person who can heal those things is God himself.
I think in that situation, for me, I would write each one of the family members that have written me off a letter again, and I would thank them for what they've brought to my life. Even though they've now written me off, I would thank them, because there's nothing quite like building somebody up before they will forgive you. To say, thank you for what you've done for me. I miss you in my life, but you've done X, Y, Z for me, and I've learned from you, and thank you.
I love that,
we're
Tina.
no longer in touch.
I love that, because you're not bringing up the hurt.
Exactly.
You bring up something positive and something strong. And I love that. I think that's a really good idea.
And so, back to my point, there's so much power in how you also communicate this. There's wisdom in how you have that conversation, or even the later, as you've mentioned. We've got a few messages coming in. I don't know how much time we have. Maybe time for two messages. Delisha says, "Guys, I'm loving this topic. It's not always easy to accept, but I read somewhere some people come into your life for a reason and some for a season. Release it, let go, and let God."
That's Delisha Goes, a clever one as well. Right? I like that.
Then one more from Ruth B, I think.
I think it's a comment, could be a question, but asking, how do you communicate with someone that keeps blocking everyone that tries to help you?
Good one.
Wow.
That is tough.
Yeah.
That is very tough.
That's actually almost a little bit evil. It's like, how do you fight somebody who's just continuously putting a block on you? Sometimes in life, and one of the things I have is, and I've had a few of these in my life, where sometimes people have moved on and you haven't.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think you just got to take some big breaths, got to forgive them and move on. What else can you do? There's nothing you do. If somebody doesn't want to see you, there's literally nothing that you can do.
Yeah.
But that's a tough one. Find yourself some new friends. Come to CCFM. There's a couple of nice people here. Come have a look. Have you met Romeo?
And then we also have Anonymous.
Last one, due to time coming through. Saying sometimes, I think Anonymous is just sharing how she feels. Sometimes you get tired of always being the mender, and actually realize your worth. You stop trying to be the bigger person and revive the relationship. Some relationships are not meant for you. They're toxic and can't be mended. And then adding on to saying as well that Anonymous adds on and says, "Haven't spoken to my sister in a few years. There's pride in her pride in not fixing the relationship lets me know exactly how she feels about me. Sometimes it is what it is."
It sounds like she's got a lot of wisdom there. I've had family members that I haven't been friends with for 40 years that recently have come back into my life. But times have changed. The old people are dead, and things have changed. And all of a sudden, we're the only ones left. And all of a sudden, now we're best of buddies. And so things do hang around there. But there's a lot of wisdom. When I chose this subject, the overriding feeling that I got is that you don't have to keep every relationship. I kept saying, is that the message I really want to send? But I think very often we, as Christians especially, we cling on to every relationship. We make ourselves small and we beg for forgiveness on things that we haven't done wrong, just to keep the relationship going, even if it is abusive. And I don't think you were ever meant to do that. I don't think you have to desperately keep those relationships.
Mm.
Move on. Move on.
And there's so much healing also when you do move on and you are at peace because you've done your best, as you say, and then you let go. Such a fitting conversation, but time is against us. And Andre and Tina B, for anyone that wants to divert these questions directly to yourselves, where can they do so on the social space?
Andre at bigpositiveguy.com. Just look for me. I'm everywhere. You just go onto the internet. I'm everywhere.
Andre, the big
I'm
guy.
peeping at you somewhere. If you look at your computer, I'm peeping at you somewhere.
And you can find me, Tina B Alive. And if you'll see that Andre and I are linked on all the platforms as well. So if you're looking for either or, you'll find the other.
Can I have a quick last say?
Yes.
So the other day, I was asked to do a presentation. I couldn't do the presentation. And then I said, I've got two other people. One of them is Tina. And then Tina and I are now going to Garden Route next week to do some presentations. And then the lady, she phoned me and she said, we'd still like to get that Tina girl back. And then she said to me, are you the same big positive guy and Tina that are on CCFM?
Wow.
And I was like, yeah. She goes, I know who you are, Rahina. So, thank you very much. It was wonderful to meet somebody who actually said, oh, no, they know who we are. So all you people that book speakers, you can find me on Andre at bigpositiveguy.com.
Fantastic. Oh man, thank you so much to you both. And of course, if you missed the conversation and you want to get some snippets from it, have a look at our Facebook as well as our YouTube page. It's 107.5 CCFM. Once again, a very positive conversation with Andre the Big Positive Guy as well as Tina B. Still to come, we have Traffic with Romeo, but before that, a few bills to pay. Perfect.
Baie dankie. I love the way that you repositioned that.